Chris O'Hara, back for another guitar tutorial, and this one is long overdue, I know, for some of you who've been waiting for this one, but here it is, and I hopefully this will be rewarding. I'm on my second cappuccino for the day, so I may be talking a little fast, so I apologize. But the good thing is you can rewind if I go too fast. So I have some more information on my website. If you're looking for more private instruction, even some other lessons I have there, even on my YouTube channel. Check out also my Twitter account because I upload some either graphs or tabs like daily exercises and things like that. So I try to get up and do something every day on Twitter. So check that out. What else? I think that's it. So let me tell you a little bit about what I'm going to be covering today. I'm going to be covering a lot of things. I'm going to be using Garageband as kind of my base application to kind of show you how to kind of record using the guitar. This is guitar focused, so if you're a keyboard player, some of this may not apply to you, but you may pick up a couple of tips because I'm going to cover some of the recording techniques and things like that. I'm also going to give you some kind of information on a little bit of theory, so how you would like keys and what chords you can use and things like that, and as well as even how to set up some tracks that you could practice with, all right, in GarageBand. So lots of fun stuff. This is not a real in-depth tutorial on GarageBand, but I will cover quite a bit of things. So if you left kind of scratching your head on a few little things in here, definitely look up some GarageBand tutorials that dive in a little bit deeper. But I'm going to try to do the best I can to give you an overview. So that's about it. So hang in there with me. This is maybe kind of long, but I'm going to cover a lot of different stuff. And definitely let me know if you have any questions, comment below. Subscribe if you like my videos, and what else? I think that's about it. Oh, today's blend, Verve Coffee from Santa Cruz. If you're ever in the Santa Cruz area, hit that Verve Coffee place. I love it. It's one of my favorite brands of coffee. Let me know what your brand is. Send me a little message below. I'm always looking for new coffee. All right, let's get started with this tutorial. So we got GarageBand open. I'm going to start from scratch, okay? So I'm going to close out this, and I'm going to open up a new session. So I'm going to go File. Oh, whoops. I do not want to stop that. That's my screen flow. Maybe I've had too much coffee. All right, here we go. I don't want to save that. Here we go. So I'm going to do, when you open up a new session, there's a few options that you have in here. You have the keyboard collection, amp collection, voice, ringtones, hip-hop, electronic, songwriter, and empty project. The one that I recommend using is the empty project. The other ones are fine, but they kind of populate the session with stuff that some of it you may not even need. So as a beginner, I would recommend the empty project. The other ones are just, like I said, they kind of populate with things that are related to that area, but sometimes it's a little overkill in my opinion. But try them out. You may find something in there that works for it. All right, I'm going to hit choose for the empty project. And it does give me one track, which is that electric piano. All right. And if you have a keyboard, I have my keyboard hooked up, so you can obviously play that keyboard part. Now, maybe the question that you may have is like, well, where do you begin with all this stuff? And then there's a lot to kind of dive into, but here, let me kind of try to distill a little bit of what kind of works for me with all this stuff. One of the first things that you want to do is kind of set up your session. And what I mean by set up your session is, if you take a look at the top area here, this is kind of, I think they could call this the transport window. And we have a couple things here. Over to the far right, we have our time signature. We have our key. We have our tempo, which is in beats per minute. Then it has tick, division, beat, and then bar, okay? Now that's just kind of giving you a reference of where we are. So if I hit play, you can see that the cursor is, this little vertical line here is moving along, and you can see it counting through that. So it's a great way to kind of keep track. I like to view it this way versus, here's the other way. If I click on this far left and I hit time, see how that whole thing changes? That is, as you can imagine, it's just a time-based thing, which can be useful if you're doing kind of audio for film. That's usually, audio for film is usually more time-based than it is bars and measures, that sort of thing. I mean, they're correlated, but a lot of times in a video, you want something to happen at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, something like that. So we're not going to worry about that. So you can also type in a certain location. If you know that your verse is at the 12th bar or something like that, you can just kind of type that in and go right to that particular location. It's important to kind of set the key up relatively soon in the session, because when you start dragging in other loops and MIDI files, it's going to lock those MIDI, all that stuff to that key that you set up in the beginning. So keep that in mind. So I like to kind of think like that. Sometimes when I'm working on coming up with an idea, I'll either do it one of two ways. One of just kind of noodling around with the guitar, like a lot of us do. Another way of doing it is to set up a kind of a rough rhythm track that maybe I can get some ideas. And I'm going to show you that in a second. I'm going to set up a drum track, no bass, nothing else, because I don't want anything to influence maybe the chords that I'm going to be selecting. So I'll show you that in just a second. But let me kind of give you a little bit more rundown of what's happening in this window in GarageBand. If we move a little bit over to our far right here, here's our master volume. I never really touch that. I leave it the way it is. The reason why is because I'm using an Apogee Duet, and I basically use the main volume knob to adjust my overall volume. So I like to keep this pretty much at kind of where it's set, which should be set at 0 dB. These things in the far right, if I click on the far right, we have basically, these are just certain kinds of assets that you have in iTunes and things like that. I don't really use that unless there's something I want to pull in from iTunes into this session. Next one is loops. I'm going to get into this a little bit later on, but these are all the different loops that you can have. Make sure when you get GarageBand, I think you have to, it's an additional kind of thing that you have to download. It's free, but you have to make sure that you pull in some of these loops and other things from the App Store. This is just a notepad, pretty simple if you need to make any sort of notes on the session. If we go to the far left here, this little library here, this is basically going to be giving me different sounds. And right now, since they gave me a classic piano here, I can change that. I can go to a modern classic. I can, let's see, if I go to a vintage clavinet, let's see what Koto clone. I'm not a good piano player, so. Let's see, 70s funk. I'd like this one. I like the funk. Yeah, you can tell I'm not a good piano player. But the thing is, and I may even show you, if I get have enough time, I may even show you how you can program some keyboard parts with very limited keyboard skills. So we can have some fun with some of these sounds. So over in the next one, this is just kind of a quick help sort of thing. If you want, as you hover around, is maybe when you're kind of getting new to this could be a great little way of kind of understanding some of these things. So for now, we're not going to do that because it may get kind of annoying. Down here, this is the smart controls. We're going to get into this too. These are just some adjustments. So right now, these would be adjustments on this clavinet that we have open. Next one is going to be how we're going to edit this stuff, and we're going to see how we're going to edit stuff for guitar tracks and things like that. And this is going to be MIDI. We're going to be doing some MIDI editing in there. So just a little kind of rundown of what some of these windows are. I'm going to get rid of that, and let's see, anything else? No, I think that's good. So let's kind of start a new track here. Let's get a new track going. Now, when you select a new track, you can do it a couple of ways. Let me cancel that out for a second. You can go up into this new track area. You can see the keyboard shortcuts for that. Another good keyboard shortcut is this one here, which is new track with duplicate settings. So as you're creating guitar parts, a lot of times you just want the same sound and you don't want to have to go and recreate all the different settings for that new guitar part of the same sound. Hopefully that made sense. So I use that quite a bit, and we're actually going to do that in today's tutorial. All right, so let me go back to that select new. We have some options here. I'm going to select the drum track first because I want to get some ideas and I want to play around a little bit with that before I even lay down something. Now this, some of this may be a little bit different if you already have a song idea in mind, but I'm going to just kind of walk you through of just kind of literally going from scratch on creating something. All right, so we're going to select this drummer track right here, and it's going to populate a track with one of these drum patterns. Okay, so let's take a listen to it. I'll have a sip of my coffee. All right, so that's like a standard thing that they give you. Now here's where some fun can happen. Is if you look down below here, we have this little drum section here. And there's a lot going on here, actually, that we can, or a lot of things that we can adjust here. This is what I like about Garageband. It makes it pretty intuitive to kind of sculpt this drum sound to our liking, all right? So what I'm going to do is, if you can see this, if I move this little ball down to the bottom, up here you can see it actually change the waveform. And so it's probably hard to read on the screen here because it's really it's just not a very good contrast in here, but let me tell you what it says. On the bottom it says soft, on the left it says simple, top it says loud, on the right it says complex. So as you can imagine, I can get a mix of any four of those areas. So for instance, as you can see, if I go loud, it changes the waveform, it actually makes the adjustments there. And what's cool is that not only does it, if I go up louder, not only is it going to make the be a louder drum part, but the actual part itself changes. So let's just kind of hear what that difference is. So here's versus something soft. Listen how the different drum arrangement changes. He's hitting the side stick on that. So this thing is pretty useful to kind of create kind of a good basic drum part. And we can change this as we add these things in. We can actually start to change the drum parts in different sections and things like that. So so keep that in mind. So let's see. But here's what I'd actually recommend you. Try something when you're setting something up. Try to get something relatively simple because you still want to have freedom to come up with your own rhythmic parts or rhythmic ideas. And if the drums are too busy, it's gonna clash with something maybe or an idea that you already have, or at least it'll have a greater influence on how you place certain rhythms, which can be good and bad depending on the context. So just keep that in mind. Now over here to the left, we have a bunch of different presets. All right, so these are different basically different drum sounds. Let's see what this one sounds like, or I should say different drum parts. The sound of this drum kit is dictated by over here. If you look over on this left side, we have all these different kinds of drum sounds. So if I select retro, it's going to have a slightly different drum kit that will be heard. Keep it simple. Now I also may make some adjustments in tempo. So I'm going to try something around 90. And that you make that adjustment up here. And I didn't do this before, but I think I'm going to do this now. I'm kind of be thinking in the key of G major. I'm going to get in a little bit of actually theory of some of the chords and how we're going to kind of maneuver in this particular key. But just so you know, I'm going to, just out of default, I'm going to select G major. And I'll get back to that in a second, but I just kind of want to set that up first. So here's our new tempo. Now my guitar there's going to be no sound coming from it just yet, but sometimes I just kind of play along with that. All right, so we're kind of getting a little bit better of how I want this to be. So you can experiment, obviously, with all these different parts here. I kind of like that. Now over here, we can now start to even change, even influence the drum part even more. So if you look at this hi-hat here, it has different hi-hat settings of how the hi-hat's gonna behave. Let me change it. Whoops, let me select the right one here. Very basic hi-hat. Slight variation on that. Yeah, again, another slight variation on here. So if I select now, I can do the same thing with the kick and snare. What sort of part are they going to play? Again, it's throwing things out that it's just different variations. I can't tell by looking at what it's going to do. So it's a little bit of a kind of a guess of how the outcome. So just be aware of that. Cool, so let's see. Little different accents. I don't like that one. Cool. All right, so if I wanted to if I go all the way to the right, I can get these kind of double time effects. So the drum part is kind of really just twice as fast. So if it's set at 90, he's going to be playing a part that's basically set up at 180. So here's a halftime. So that's kind of cool. So if you want to really change up the feel for a different part of the song, you can actually select those and do it that way. Now over here, we do have this sort of swing value here. Now basically, it's hard to kind of describe what swing is as far as what it's doing. Maybe when I get into some of the MIDI notes, I'll explain that, because sometimes it's easier to kind of see it on a graph. But basically, it's this: if I select 16th note and I start to add more swing to it, the notes that it's going to change would be in the count. It would be the E's and the U's of the count. And the one and is always going to be the same. So here's the one and, if I kind of play it on a guitar, 1 and 2 and. So if it's 16 notes swing, it's going to be, and I increase that, it's not going to change what this is. This will always be in the same place. Now here's a 16th note. Here it is, just a straight up 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4. That's what they would call a straight 16th note, meaning everything is the same value, okay? Every note length is the same. Now when you start adding this swing to it, the downbeat would be here. 1, 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It subtly shifts, like I said, the E's and the the E's and the U's of the count a little bit over to kind of give it this kind of swinging effect to it. So it's worth trying it out. But in a part like this, there's not a lot of 16th note, but we'll try it anyway. See, there may be a couple little accents that they throw in there. One of the best ways to do it is just crank it up, just to kind of hear the effects if you're unsure of what it's going to do. I could hear it in a little bit of that fill right there. Now, most of this is in 8th note groove, and you may hear it, but there is 16th note parts to it. But if I switch it over to 8th note, it's probably a little bit better because it's a little more exaggerated. It's almost like a shuffle, like a blues shuffle when you do that. So you can actually change the way it feels just by this swing value here. So I'm going to bring it down. I'm actually not even going to use this. I want to keep it kind of straight for this purpose. The fills, same thing. It's going to change the way the fills, which, let me get a full 8-bar loop going up here. If you want to get rid of the loop or add the loop, it's your C keystroke. You can see that little yellow bar, and I can adjust those boundaries on either side of where I want it to loop. So if I increase it, it's probably going to give me more. Yeah, hear that? Yeah, it's just basically giving me more fills to it. Again, I like to keep it simple when I'm starting out. I can always go and change this stuff later. All right. So I think we covered all the different drum, or most of the drums, to kind of get us started. Now let's add the guitar part. So I'm going to go in here and add a new track. And you can see that the drum track's already been grayed out because we already have them. You can only have one at a time in GarageBand. Now, you may be tempted to grab this part, this selection here, which is recording guitar bass using the GarageBand as an amp, which is actually okay. I actually like to start from scratch because I like to just build up my guitar track, or this, I should say, the sound from the ground up. And so it's a little, not really intuitive, but again, I like to use this one, which is a microphone, which you would think you're going to sing through it, do like a singing track, vocal track. Not the case in what we're going to do here. So if you're following along, just select that. And this also allows you to choose the input to that particular track that we're going to create. And you can do this after the fact, and I'll show you where that is. But if you can remember to do it here, go ahead and select the input based off the audio device that you have. If you watched my first tutorial on this, you saw that I'm using the Apogee Duet, which is 2 inputs. Input 1 is my vocals, or the vocal mic here, and track 2, as you can guess, is my guitar track. So I'm going to select that. Now, even though I've selected that and you start playing, you may not hear anything. And the reason why is because we need to select this monitoring switch here, which is this kind of the tab or the far right button here. So once I select that, my guitar will now come through the speakers. It's just bone dry. There's no effects or anything attached to it. Well, there actually may be. Let me show you. Very minimal, but let me show you. If I go down to hit this info button right here, what I did is I double clicked on this area right here, and if I right click on it, I can change the picture here. So I'm going to say I'm using, there we go, nice telly picture there. So now it's a guitar track, so you can have some fun with the icons in there. But let me go down here. So that plugins right here, right now it has an EQ already on there. If I double click on this, it's going to open up the EQ. Nothing, it's not doing anything, but I still like to just turn it off for now. And to do that, you see the little power button on the far left here. That now gets rid of that, so it's not part of the chain, or at least it's not on. I can add plugins here, and I'm going to get into doing that in just a second. But let me go through a few things here. Master Echo, Master Reverb. That's going to be the overall effect for everything, and I just like to just turn that off. So let's see. So it's still, we have just basically a bone dry guitar track. I may work on a little bit of the recording level to make sure that the recording level is set up just right. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at this meter right here. Now if this is set to 0, it's going to, this level here is going to mirror what this master level over here. All right, so just be aware of that. So what I'm trying to shoot for is to get this recording level as hot as I can, but I don't want it to see it go into the red. So I play around with some dynamics on the guitar to make sure that if I hit it, if I accidentally hit the guitar kind of hard, that it's not going to clip, because digital clipping doesn't sound good. Sounded better back in the old analog days. So be aware of that. It's better to be a little bit conservative on the levels than to get them too hot. Otherwise, you're going to get some distortion. It's not. It's going to be. You can't get rid of it. It's there. Down here, I don't like to use this feedback protection. Don't even, most of the time you don't even need to worry about that sort of thing, especially when you're recording guitar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this compressor, and I'm actually going to get rid of this. If I select no plugin, then we can really get rid of everything, not just shut it off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use everything that's built into GarageBand. So I'm going to use this amp designer, which is the first plugin in the line. And to do that, all you have to do is kind of click in this area. You can see these little arrows right here. Add the amp designer. Voila! And it's just going to give you the first amp that they have, which in this case is basically, looks like a model from a Vox AC30. Now if you go select into here, this drop down menu here, it has a bunch of different categories and different ways of organizing all the amp sounds, and it's probably worth kind of investigating some of these and getting familiar with the different presets here. If you already have a good grasp of that, you may not want to go that route, and you may want to go right to the model of amplifier that you want. So that's what I'm going to do for right now. So I'm going to select a large blackface combo, which is like a Fender, basically kind of like a Fender Twin type sound. Now we have our main, you can see here, we have our main EQ, bass, mid, treble. We have our gain right here. Works basically just like a real amplifier. And so what I'm going to do for right now is I'm going to shut off a few things. I'm going to turn off the reverb. Actually, I'll leave the reverb on now. And the nice thing is, like, when I record, this is all non-destructive, meaning I can go back in and change this amp if I want. I can change the EQs. I can change all that. That's what I love about modern recording technology, is that you have a lot of flexibility to fine-tune things later. These effects here I'm going to just turn off, which is basically a tremolo. Then we have our presence, master, that sort of thing. I'm going to leave where it's set up right now. Over here you can see we have our cabinet. If I kind of hover over that microphone, you can see this little thing here, which I can actually move this microphone around, which will give you kind of different sounds. It's basically an advanced EQ is what it's doing. I can select a different type of microphone. That's an old RE20, not old, but that's what the microphone is. Condenser 414. That's like an AKG microphone. You got some ribbons here. It's like a Royer, I think, one. Anyway, they have different models of microphones here that you can select. This Dynamic 57, that's a very classic guitar amplifier microphone that's been used in tons of different recordings. And I use it. I think it sounds good. Although I do like some of these other different microphones in here. I think that sound a little bit better. They're not as bright, a little bit softer sounding. Maybe go for this Neumann here. Let's see what that one. My monitor on, I'll be able. We'll try recording something and play around a little bit. This is easier to do once we record it. Now I can also select here some different types of cabinets. This is right now is a 410. Since I want more of that blackface, or that I should say Fender Twin sound, which is basically a 212. That is distorting, but I think it's distorting from this plug-in right here. Maybe not. Let me just make sure. I thought I had that set. Riding a little too hot. Still a little bit hot. So this master does affect this level here. So be aware of that. If you're getting that distortion, like Now that's why I like to start without it, because it does give me kind of a starting ground. So I really, if I turn this off, that's really the good optimal level that I want here. Good. Now when I turn this on, if I'm still distorting, then I'm going to have to adjust this. I don't want to have to move this, because that's going to change the amount of gain coming into the computer. This, again, this was distorting, and it was because of the plugin, not because of where I had the gain set up. All right, so we're kind of in the ballpark. I just didn't want that distorting quite as much as it was. All right, so I got my sound, my amp sound here. Now I think about ready to record something. Now before I record, I may just kind of loop this a bunch of times and just start to kind of build some ideas. I'm just kind of having some fun, and I usually spend, I don't know, maybe, doesn't matter how long, just kind of play around with it. You get some ideas, kind of even before you even record anything. Get an idea of what you want to record, and then you can record it, and then listen back and go, okay, I'm close, maybe let me try something a little bit different. Because when you hear it back, you'll make different types of decisions than when you're just kind of playing along. So spend a few minutes coming up with an idea, then lay it down and listen to it, and then kind of decide where to go from there. Okay? All right, so let's do that. Let's record something. So I said I'm in the key of G here. And if you know a little bit about theory, there's specific chords within this key of G that we can use. Let me just kind of go through all the different chords in the key of G for you real quick. So we have our G chord, and I'm just going to use basic open chords as a starting point. I may use some different versions, but just to start with that. So G, A minor, B minor, C, D, E minor, F sharp diminished, playing a minor 7 flat 5, but it's basically the chord in that key. Back to G. All right. So with the exception of F sharp minor 7 flat 5, most of those are really straightforward chords. And the nice thing about knowing that is that you can pretty much choose any order of those chords to kind of create a song. It's if you know that, it's basically multiple choice is what I'm trying to say. But you do have to kind of use your ear. Your ear is going to dictate or it's going to influence the order or the chords that you select for the particular song. So and each key has its own set of chords, like the key of G. The nice thing is if we're dealing with a major key, that sequence of major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished is the same in every key, that order of the chord. So if I'm in the key of A, same thing. It would start with A, next chord is minor, B minor, next chord is minor, C sharp minor, D major, E major, F sharp minor, G sharp diminished, back to A. All right, so that same sequence of, like I said, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, half diminish or diminished is all going to be the same for every major key. Now, I don't want to get in too much in a theory lesson, but just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what you can do. And so if you're kind of new to it a little bit and understand a little bit of this, it'd be good to kind of experiment with laying down some tracks, playing around with different order of the chord progression, just to get familiar of that particular key. And we may do a little bit of that in this lesson. So for instance, I may record a G to a C back to a G. Maybe I don't like that. Maybe I want to choose another chord in that sequence, maybe A minor. But now that A minor sounds like it wants to go somewhere other than G. Maybe to a D, maybe even to a C. Yeah, A minor likes to go to C. A minor does like to go to D. So there's certain kind of tendencies that these chords have, and as you experiment with them, you'll start to hear the kind of the places that these chords want to go, or I should say push to, meaning A is pushing to C, C is going to push back to G. In a way, I always feel like everything trickles back down to this key center, in this case G. So even though A goes to C, C is bringing us back to G. Everything kind of leads us back to G in a way, regardless of where we go. So if I go to say G to E minor sometimes likes to go to C to D, back to G. Always takes us back home. Experiment, and I think you'll kind of get an idea of what I'm saying here. So let's see. Let's do that progression of G, A to C. Let's play around. I'll play with the drum track first, and then I'll record the part. Now let's record it. And so, let's see. I'm also using my iPad. If you have an iPad, you can download for free the Logic app for this, which is a remote control, which is nice. It has some basic functions on here that you can use to control GarageBand right from your iPad. So, it has, like, right now I'm looking for the record button. I don't use this too much, but I'm starting to get more familiar with it. I'm going to use the record button. Before I hit the record button, let me kind of show you up here. There's a couple things that are important. One of which is the count off. We want to be able to, if I hit record without this count off, it's just going to start in. I won't have time to grab my guitar. So that's what this little count off button is right here. This next one here is basically a metronome or a click. So when I have this, and I'll turn this drum track down so you can hear what that's on, and it'll be going on the whole time. Hear that little click there? But since we already have a drum part, I really don't need that, so I'm going to turn that off. Now, by default, I believe the count off is set to 1 bar, but if you want to change that, you go into record, and you can select either 1 bar or 2 bar. Usually 1 bar is going to be enough, unless it's kind of a faster tempo, maybe you need a 2 bar count off. So let's hear what that would sound like. So if I hit record, it only works in record. So if I hit record, 3, 4, and it's going to, that's where it starts recording. And you can see that it had a little red, that track was filling up with red, telling me that we're recording that. So I'm going to Command Z that. Now let's actually go and record that. See if I can play it right this time. G, A minor, C, back to G. All right? It's going to sound like this. Now again, we're going to use the count off. It's going to be 4 beats, and then we're in. 2, 3, 4. All right, so let's hear what we got. Okay, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's fine. And what I sometimes will do is I'll start to build up my tracks and then go back and maybe replace parts that weren't that good when I recorded, but sometimes I like to keep the flow of this sort of creative process going and not worry too much about perfection. So, all right, cool. So we got that part down. Let's record another part, all right? So instead of playing these open chords, maybe I'll just lay down a bar chord version of that. So here's my G bar chord. I don't know if you can see that in G, A minor, and C. I'll play it all along. This is a 6-string root bar chord. I'll play it all along here, and I'll leave this part on just so I can have kind of a reference and also try to create something kind of complementary. But before I do that, I want to duplicate this track, because if I duplicate this, then I don't have to, I want the same sound, I just don't want to have to rebuild all that stuff I did before. So if I go into, let's see, where is it? Yeah, track, here it is, new track with duplicate settings. All right. So I got everything, and let me just test it real quick. All right, I think we're good to go. So let's do now another version with bar chords. All right, let's check that out. Here's just the bar chord one. Here's both. Pan 'em. So I kind of like it. One's kind of the open chords is kind of sustaining through that, where the bar chord one gets a little more rhythmic to it, and that's what's kind of the benefit of the bar chords, is that we can kind of create more staccato chords, very rhythmic chords in there. And the other, I'm just kind of thinking through a few things else we can try in this. Now, two other options. Actually, let me back up 1 second. So we recorded one with more sustaining parts, one with more rhythmic parts, but they're all kind of in the low to middle range of the guitar. And what I'm trying to get at is this, is that we may want something a little bit higher up. Whoops. Right? So something that, again, it's kind of getting away from the range of the other parts, and it'll probably cut through the mix a little bit more. So let's try that. I'm going to duplicate the same settings again, and let's just kind of go through this. Now, it's also assuming that you know how to find these, so you may have to work some of these out, and because of my experience, I can map out what I'm going to do, because I've see these chords throughout the neck. But let me just kind of show you these next chords I'm going to play. I'm going to play a G chord, but with the D shape right up here. This is on the 7th fret. And I'll try to create a PDF or something that you can download with these shapes that I'm using in the song. But here's our G chord, but here on the D shape. Then I'm going to go to A minor, which is this shape here, 8, 10, 9. And then I'm going to go to the C chord, which is going to be, whoops, I'm going to do this one up here. Same, it's going to be a D shape as well. Back to a G chord, but I'm going to play this version of the G, which is going to be on the 10th fret, 12, 12. And I'm playing it just like that. Hopefully you can see that. Here we go. Let's try that new part out. I missed it, but it's okay. We'll keep moving along. So I think it's okay, and I may think of, instead of doing more of that kind of funky rhythm there, I may play something a little bit different. So again, this is what's kind of fun about this, is you have to kind of experiment, listen to it and see how the part fits, and then try something different if you need to. So I'm just going to try something different here. what that one sounds like. Oh yeah. All right, not too bad. I'll just leave that as where it's at. So you kind of get the idea, I think, what I'm trying to do here. And I may experiment with other parts. There's one other actually little part that I may play. Is something kind of muted. So we have an upper part that's kind of more sustained. We have a lower part that's sustained. And then we have a rhythm part, or more of a choppy rhythm. But I also may play another kind of percussive rhythm part. Something like this. Let me play around. I'm going to duplicate another track. And I like to kind of use the same sounds as I'm kind of building through this track. And then, as you know, I can go back and change it and go, maybe I want this part to be, let's say, more distorted or something like that. But I just like to keep the flow going. So I'm going to do a new track here. And I don't know. I'm experimenting. Let's see what happens. Who knows? Do that again. I had a wrong note in there. Let me see what that, and I'll maybe loop that. I like it. I may just change it a little bit, maybe make it a little bit less busy. Let's see what that sounds like. Come on. Yeah, I like that. It's very subtle. It's not overpowering everything. A lot of times in recording, simplify as much as you can, because as you're building these tracks up, it's going to help everything kind of lock together. If the guitar part's too complex, then it can just be kind of a mess in a way. So just be aware of that. That first time I played, I felt when I listened back to it was too busy. Simplifying it now starts to make a little bit better part for that. So let's see here. Let me just kind of, if I kind of hover over on this side, I can kind of trim up these areas. I can also, if you hover over here, I can loop this whole part. Oops, there we go. And basically it's a way of kind of duplicating it. But there's another way of doing it too. Whoops, I had all these highlighted. I just wanted this one like that. See, I can stretch it out. Now it's going to basically duplicate that part. The problem with that is by looping that, by pulling that out, you can see that little loop symbol here. The problem with that is if I loop it out here and I wanted to chop this something up in here, I can't do that. It's because it's referencing this. So sometimes what I like to do is be able to copy and then paste. I line up my vertical line here to that and then paste it over there. That way I can go in here. Maybe I want this part to be only come in on the second half or something like that. Maybe not the first bar or something like that. You can chop these tracks up however you want. So now I've extended to the full length of this loop that we're creating. I could have done that with the other tracks too. But here's the one thing that I think is important is to, instead of creating small chunks and then just copy and pasting it throughout where you need it, it starts to get kind of you lose some of the dynamic and the substance, the true music details when you copy and paste it, because you're basically getting rid of any sort of dynamic change or slight inconsistencies that actually make it more human and more real. So I do record small bits and pieces and do copy and paste a lot to keep things moving fast. However, I do recommend try to record as long of sections as you can. At least record, like if this was a verse, I would try to play through the entire verse. If maybe even through 2 sections if I can. So sometimes it's not always easy to do if you're still working on your performance part of it, but do the best you can. The overall track will sound a lot better, I think. So let's just hear it one more time. Cool. So we're starting to build up. Now it's already sounding pretty full without even a bass part. So let's do that. Now, because we have kind of a unique chord progression, I shouldn't say unique. I mean, this chord progression has been used a billion times. But if we want to add something, let's say a loop over here, and I go, let's say I want to add a bass part, and I select my bass. This can be a little maddening. Here's the reason why. Is because there's going to be a lot of these different bass parts that just don't fit the chord progression that you've created here. It's different if you kind of have a single groove, single chord. These things work really well for that, but they don't always fit, and that's the kind of the downside with some of this stuff. So let's see, and some of these sounds are just not always appropriate. So what I like to do is I kind of go for a sound, and I'm going to edit this. Ooh. Okay, I kind of like the sound. I don't like the part, but let me show you what we're going to do. So here, I could tell that it's actually locked into the key that I have set, in this case G. The first note is a G. So what I'm going to do is, this is an area that we haven't talked about. These are MIDI notes. What's nice about MIDI notes versus loops, let me show you the difference here. I'm just going to grab something kind of random here and put it down here. So here's a loop. You can see it looks like the same waveform as what we recorded in the guitar parts. And the problem with these waveforms is that you can't really edit the notes. So whatever bass part this is, let's see. You can't change the notes of that because it's kind of like a recording is what it is that you're throwing in there. Let me see if I can get rid of this track here, delete track. Or there are regions, yeah, get rid of that. On this MIDI track here, whoops, I can actually grab a note and change it to wherever I want. And so this grid here basically represents a couple things, pitch and also time. And so I can move these notes however I want, both in pitch and length, to something that I feel like is appropriate. So you can see that this note here is not part of that chord. So the next chord is A, so I'm going to bring that up to an A bass note. I'm going to bring this over here, and I'm going to put this to another note of the A chord, and I'm going to go, let's see, I'm going to go root in fifths of the chord. So if it's G, the root is G, the fifth of that is G, A, B, C, D. It's going to be D, so that's my D note there. And I'm going to try to lock this in time-wise here. These grids are kind of hard to read. I don't have my glasses on, so hopefully I'm setting this up in the right notes here. All right. Cool. Sounds good. Now I'm going to duplicate this, copy, and then paste that over. Looks like that thing didn't line quite up, snap to grid. There we go. So then what I'm going to do is the next chord is C. So I need to move this up. There's our C. I'm going to add that to the 5th of C, which is going to be G. And this one's going to go back down to G, and that'll be D. So now I have, hopefully I have my bass part kind of set up. All right, nice. Now you can have a lot of fun with, adding notes. Maybe I want to do this. I want to add back another G note here. And what I did is to add that, I hold down my command, and that created a little pencil. And now I can create a whole new note. Oops, I don't want an F sharp. There we go. So I added a couple more notes. I added another G and then an octave G up here. Let's see what that sounds like. Now maybe I want to displace that rhythm a little bit. Instead of having it right on the beat there, I'm going to have it maybe right here. And I like that same kind of rhythm. I'm going to go that do-da, say 1, 2, do-da, something like that. And you can see if I hold this down over here, it's telling me what note I'm on. All right, let's see, make sure that's all good. And I'm going to go up to the, sometimes I just write it in. It's hard to tell, so I'm just going to, once I write it in there, I can adjust it. And this could be the second thing that you put in if you already know kind of what bass part you want. But I like to, since I'm a guitar player, I like to come up with a part first and then match up a bass part with what I'm doing. All right. And when you're creating bass parts, what's real important part of the groove is not just like the start rhythm. What I mean by start rhythm is where the onset of the note, but also where the note stops. So you can see there's a little gap between, let's say, this note here and the next note. That's going to create a certain amount of energy and space in the track. Can you hear that? Do, da, da, do, da, rest, Just like that. I may even shorten this one. Let's see what that sounds like. I don't like it as much, but you can see, you can start to experiment just here with these different length of note sounds. Now let's see if I want to change the dynamics of these notes. Oops. Here we go. So here's the velocity of it. Let's see if it's, here we go. There, that's what I'm looking for. So if I click on this little thing right here, it brings up this little chart down here. This is basically how hard they're going to be hitting the note. You can see it's all, the dynamics are pretty much in this kind of range here. If I bring this note really, if I bring it down, it's going to be real quiet. That will also add some more human quality to this sort of programmed bass part. Maybe I want just the opposite. I want this one to be a little bit softer and that shorter note louder. And I don't like it as much, but again, you can see where I'm experimenting. I kind of like it the other way around, where this one's a little bit softer than that one. All right, so now we've had this part that we recorded, and I can go in again. I can just start extending the length of the song to different sections. You can kind of go. Let's see. Was this? Ooh, that thing got chopped off at some point. It's all right. We can just extend that out. You can work through different sections. You can basically do this. You can take your loop, move this over to the next 9 bars, and start all over again. Some parts you maybe want to continue over. Like I said, you can duplicate them, but try to record longer sections. That'll give it a lot more dynamics to it. All right, so we have our bass, we have our guitar parts, and we have our drum part. I can go in and do the same thing with keyboards. Now, I may do something. Let me just show you a quick thing with the keyboard track. So let's say I'm going to do new track. Here's where I may use, let's see what this option will give us here. It just throws down electric piano. So like I said, I'm not a great piano player, but I'm just going to demonstrate what you can do and how you can maybe fix a bad piano performance. So I'm going to record. I'm just going to use this default one, and I can always change it later. So let's see what happens. Whoops, let me get my loop back to where I wanted. I'm just going to do the first 4 bars of that. Make sure I'm selected. You got to make sure when you're recording your MIDI tracks, because I'm using a keyboard, it's going to record these MIDI notes. And I could have done that with my bass track. I just kind of want to show you how you can start it and just use a mouse to create it. So now we're going to do the electric piano. We could do the same thing. We can enter the notes in on the piano track, but this is going to be a little bit easier, I think. So here we go. Oh boy. Oh, that was a little painful. Oops. So, but here's the good news. I'm going to take this piano track. Whoops, that thing got moved over. Don't want that. I'm going to select these notes here, all right? And there's this thing called quantize. Quantizing, basically what it does is it takes the onset of the notes and moves it over to basically where it should be, next closest correct rhythm that's on the grid. So if I zoom in, this is a little zoom in thing here. You can see right here I'm a little bit early. Here it's kind of in between. It's not real clear where I was trying to place that one. This one is pretty good. This one notes off a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all right? And I'm going to quantize it to 1/8 notes, because that's mostly what I was playing as far as the keyboard parts. And I'm going to hit this Q. Oops, I guess I didn't need to do that. I think it did it automatically. Let me do that again. So I have it selected. I'm going to hit Q and see how everything moves. The start of these notes now move on to very specific beats. In this case, it's going to move to the next closest 1/8 notes. Go. So now I kind of fixed my poor performance. Now if I hit a wrong note, let's say this note in here is a wrong note. Let's see what it is. It's an E, so it's fine. It's part of the key, and I think it sounds okay. But let's say that was a wrong note. I can go there and change it just like I did with the bass part. Now let's say I wanted that to be an organ sound. Let's see. B3 organ. Here we go. You want the heavy metal organ? All right. How about, I'm just curious to see what the soul organ sounds like. This may not be what we want, but we'll find out. Classic rock organ. Part of it is the range. It probably needs to be higher, okay? I could go in here and select all and move everything up an octave if I wanted to. So basically I'm going to take this. There we go. Better. I think that works a little bit better. I'm going to leave that. I kind of like the organ sound, and I'm going to pull that volume down a little bit. Great. So now, again, I can go in and start to lay out the rest of the song, but let's say I created this just to practice with, and here's what I mean by practice. We're in the key of G, and I want to practice, let's say, my G major scale to kind of improvise and solo. I can also do it to find other chords. Maybe I want to practice some different chord shapes with these chords laid out, meaning maybe I want to try this G shape, and this A minor, and this C, and this G. And I want to work through that. I can now play along with it. I got this great loop that I set up, and you didn't even need to go this far. You could just play a simple open chord section and then start practicing from there. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to kind of work on some scales, okay? So I'm going to actually create a new track. And I'm going to duplicate, again, I'm going to duplicate this one. All right. Make sure I'm selected here. And I'm going to extend this out. And I'm actually going to also take these, copy, whoops, and I'm going to paste these two tracks that I created. So we get a full 8-bar loop here. Make sure my guitar is working here. All right, so now I'm going to practice my scale, and I'm going to record myself practicing it, and we're going to take a look at how we can improve on our practicing with this. So, and I'm just going to, the position I'm playing is just this first position of a G major scale. Oops. All right, here we go. See what that sounds like. I'm just going to do the first 4 measures, so I'm going to take a look at this. Oops. Double click on that little region here, and I'm going to zoom in. You can see these notes here. So if I wanted to, I could actually zoom in and really good detail. Let me kind of get this a little bit louder. I may have to start turning other instruments down so I can hear. There's also another way of doing this. Let me show you. I'm going to add a compressor to here. I haven't talked too much about compressors or some of these other plugins. But if I go under Dynamics and I select Compressor, I get this little window up here. I can also use these, what they call smart controls down here, to adjust the ratio. And I'm going to select roughly a 4:1 ratio, which is kind of a standard. This is the threshold attack. Now basically what a compressor is going to do is going to restrict the dynamic range. It's going to restrict it and bring it up. So any sort of inconsistencies in my volume, how hard I hit each string, it's going to basically smooth all that out. And I'm doing that just so I can hear. I'm really interested in actually listening to my timing of this scale, and see if there's any notes that I was kind of flubbing at all. So I'm compressing it so I can really hear it through all those instruments that are being played. And I usually like to use compression on a lot of different instruments. I'll probably go back and put it on all these different tracks, even if it's like a subtle amount, because it kind of evens out the dynamic level of my performance, so that guitar part, or even let's say if it's a different instrument, sits nicely in the mix and never gets lost or never gets too loud, basically. So let's zoom in again. And if I wanted to, I can actually start to take this thing, and it's probably hard to see on your screen, but there's this grid right here. And the grid is the timing, or that's like the rhythmic timing. So I can see that because of all the coffee I had, I'm a little bit early. Because here's the 16th note. This thing kind of locks into it. You'll kind of feel how it locks in to the 16th note grid. So that's a 16th note I'm a little bit behind. Sorry, that's one I'm a little bit early. Sorry, this one a little bit early. So now I'm starting to kind of see that I'm kind of rushing through this a little bit. Some of them are right on, and this is important because it gives you more information about how to get better, right? You can sit there and practice the scale up and down and just hope for the best that it's going to get better, which kind of generally how most people do. But unless we kind of really analyze our playing, we won't really know how to fix it. So this is a good way of doing it. Maybe there's a specific note within this scale pattern that's throwing me off, that's kind of causing a little bit of a hiccup, and maybe that I wasn't aware of that just when I'm playing. I'm just kind of going through and didn't realize that one note was throwing me off. This sometimes is a good way to kind of tell. Maybe I just want to isolate this part with just the drums. See what that sounds like. Whoops. I selected the wrong one. Here we go. Yeah, I can hear a couple things that I need to work on. One, I was kind of hitting the strings too hard, partly because I was probably having a hard time hearing myself, so I was kind of laying into the strings. So I probably need to turn myself up better, so I kind of relax and not hit the strings as hard. The other thing is yeah, I'm definitely rushing the notes a little bit. I could stand pulling back the rhythm a little bit better, so it's locking in a little bit better because it's kind of a laid back track. So any rate, so that now gives me more fuel to go back and start changing and add things. Now, that's just practicing the scale. You can also, as you can imagine, just go back and start improvising over this. So if I want to do that, let me just do one take of just kind of noodling. Let's see what happens. So I was timing wise, I was a little bit better, more on the beat. I'm looking at how these things are locking in. I can see that I was a little bit better of nailing the beats. Like these are pretty much dead on, which is good. So anyway, so I'd go back and then I'd start to think of, okay, what licks don't sound good over those chords. Now I have a good kind of reference on how everything is kind of working together, both from a chord, from a melody, or kind of a solo, I should say. Yeah, I just get a little bit better reference. And I'll go back and record, do this a bunch of times. So now I have this great rhythm, basically backing track. You've created your own backing track. And I can go back and maybe record different chord changes, that sort of thing. If I want to experiment with different chord changes, I probably wouldn't have 5 different guitar parts or 4 different guitar parts playing the same thing. It's going to be tough to go back and redo that. Maybe just 1, maybe 2 or something like that. And then I will have to go and do the bass and the organ if I want those in the track. But as you can see, it won't take you too long, especially if you know how to use some of the tools like writing a bass part in, how I did it, and adding the keyboard if you have a keyboard on that. So let's see. I think I'm about done with this tutorial. I'm trying to think of anything else I can add to this. The one thing that I didn't get into too much, maybe I can save for different tutorials, get into some more of these plugins, because that's a whole nother world to explore, because there's so many different little things that you can do, and so many different parameters and some things that you have to learn how to or know what they do, basically. For instance, ratio, what is that? What is compressor threshold? All that stuff. So yeah, I think I'll save that for another tutorial. So keep your eyes open for that, and hopefully this was helpful, and let me know if you have any questions, and shoot me some tracks that you guys are making. I'd love to hear what you guys are writing, recording, and yeah, I think that's about it. So I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thanks for watching. Ciao.